art, doodles and cosmos. Welcome to Peter Kohl's world. He wears graffiti on his skin and irony in his heart. Peter Kohl, born in 1971 in Klagenfurt, at home in Ebenthal, but actually at home in the whole world. He is not an ordinary artist. His pictures, a mix of childlike seriousness, grotesque humour and societal impact. His texts, doodles with depth, his attitude uncompromisingly honest. What makes his work so special? They laugh, provoke, love, and pose questions that we usually prefer to suppress. Amidst colourful chaos and subversive humour, Peter creates text images that captivate and challenge us. His figures, often animal-like and seemingly playful, are rebellious commentators of our time. His art is a cry with a wink. Let's create space for the unplanned, says Peter. And that's exactly what happens on canvases, in exhibitions and in minds. Currently, Peter works not only as an artist but also as a lecturer at the Free Academy of Fine Arts in Carinthia and recently curated a spectacular special edition of Stay in Art, in which he not only broke the format but also reinvented it completely. His favorite color seems to be pink. His favorite weapon, irony. His mission, to wake people up with style, soul, and a very long metaphorical tale. Enjoy this episode. How does the art scene tick? The podcast with heart, humor, and attitude, even without prior knowledge. Farewell to intimidation, for marveling, laughing, asking questions, listen in, and join the conversation from now on. By and with Petra Lossen. Hello and welcome, Peter Kohl.
Hello, Petra Lossen.
I greet you. A big thank you. I am really happy that you are here because I am a fan. At least I've become one through engaging with your work. Peter, first of all, before we even start, there is a completely crazy picture on your website, peterkohl.at. It looks a bit crazy, could be carnival, but if I didn't know who you are, then I would think, no, that surely isn't. You are wearing makeup, you somehow have a little hat on, and you are wrapped in this warm, adhesive tape, fragile, it says there, so cushion, fragile, what's that all about? It just looks very interesting.
Yes, that's it too. So the background of this photo, there are several. However, she's already somewhat older, around 10, 12 years old. It's a series of works where I dealt quite critically with the Catholic Church. And for this work, indeed, these photos were taken with the note for the church, caution, fragile.
So the message, caution, fragile, is directed at the church.
Goes to the church, yes.
Because they obviously haven't quite understood how fragile the human soul is.
Exactly.
Except maybe the mishaps. Exactly, yes.
He is now a little bit, the fragility is...
Yes, or I don't know. Sometimes I think not really.
I think so too.
Yes,
I think so
exactly.
too, yes.
Exactly. So right now it is still very current. I'm a bit shocked that it has become an American one. I don't know if that is helpful at the moment.
Well, that's me too. So Trump alone didn't make the knot. Now we have an American Pope as well. So it's actually a catastrophe for me.
Yes. Yes. Have you personally, may I ask that? Just say you don't have to answer if you don't want to. Have you personally had bad experiences with the Catholic Church?
Well, I myself have not had any bad experiences. Well, actually, yes, because the topic of religion has always occupied me. So not just the Catholic Church, but this whole sectarianism and what there is related to religion and also to Christianity. But the Catholic Church, with its over 2,000 years of tyranny, of course, has interested me very much. And that's why it received a lot of attention in my work.
Yes, okay. Can we see more of the series on the web, Zito?
From the photo series? No, not on the website.
Okay.
No.
Would have been interesting, but okay. Now I'll start with you from the beginning. As I do with everyone else, you were born in Klagenfurt and live and work in Ebenthal in Carinthia. And you are, yes, at least I read that you allowed yourself to have a self-taught education, but later you still pursued a degree in painting at the Institute for Art and Philosophy in Carinthia. And today you are not only an artist, a painter, but you are also a lecturer at the Free Academy of Fine Arts in Carinthia.
How does one teach oneself to paint?
I would say not at all myself. Okay, I would say not at all. And that's because one somehow still has to acquire the techniques. What's behind it, the perspectives on or approaches to painting, they don't come out of nowhere. You have to get them from somewhere. That's why I don't particularly like the words self-taught in relation to painting. So I have to say I was a musician and couldn't decide for a long time. So music or many of my friends started studying in Vienna at the academy, but I didn't. At that time, I was still too much of a musician and was really focused on music and did that on the side, self-taught. There's a funny incident, and then I met the founder of the Free Academy in Klagenfurt, who was also a very good jazz musician. And after a while, he frankly told me, you know, Peter, I would quit the music making. You're better at drawing.
Yeah, shit, yeah. That was...
First of all, a big disappointment. Pain, of course, pain. It's always like this. As dear Nietzsche, you don't grow in the comfort zone. But then at some point, I thought about it painfully, and eventually I really realized, yes, that's crap, that's right. And I then relatively soon decided on painting, and then back then it was called the Institute for Art and Philosophy Carinthia. Now it is the Free Academy. And back then I actually went to this institute as one of the first or almost first students and got trained there by Luka Antikovic, who was the director at the time. And then everything took its course. I don't regret it. And I've thanked him many times for being so honest and telling me directly.
But Peter, it is indeed hard to take such criticism, especially when it comes to something so far-reaching, when you're maybe hoping for a career as a musician or at least envisioning it, then that's no small thing. I imagine it to be quite difficult. So you almost have to take your hat off to someone that accepts it. And obviously, it was a good story because your paintings are amazing.
Yes, it was a good story. As I said, I've already mentioned it. It was very painful, but I'm naturally a very self-critical person, and I really thought a lot about it, and then also talked to other musicians and with my friend who told me that, Luca, and then I really realized, yes, that's how it is. And as I said, I made the decision quite soon. I really noticed it myself because Luca was a great jazz musician himself, and we met during our studies in Bamlach, and we had a jam session together, and he then bluntly pointed out my weaknesses, and then we drew together, and I saw, okay, yes, the person is right.
So now we have simultaneously received the answer as to why
as it had to go in this direction for you. Something artistic was definitely like that. You were born this way, right? So either it's you or art.
Right. So I have, this may sound a bit cliche, but I actually started drawing as a young boy. And in high school, my art teacher, back then, art teachers were also artists. That's not so common these days. I came into contact with drawing quite early. I have always liked it.
Yes. When I look at your work, your pictures, two things stand out to me. No, three. Firstly, you paint many animals, almost exclusively.
Almost exclusively. So that's right. Many animals it is. Almost exclusively. It is too much. It is too much. But I like animals. That's first of all. Also privately. My studio is on a farm. I have animals. I like animals. And I have dealt a lot with animals earlier. And of course, one attributes certain characteristics to animals, the wise owl, the clever fox, the evil wolf, blah, 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 blah. And it is true, one can certain characteristics that are attributed to animals. There is something graphic, painterly in it. You can emphasize, you can exaggerate, you can understate. So it is a design vocabulary that I have acquired over the years. Indeed, yes.
Yes. The second thing is, it's almost always written on your works. So texts, entire texts, just words. Here is even this, what is this game called? Where you have herbs and 3 in a row.
3 wins exactly.
Yes, that's right, exactly. Yes, exactly. Yes, that's how it came about. I always loved playing that as a child. Back then it was called Connect 4, or sometimes Mill. And now I do it in my works very quickly without much thought. And then I'm always excited to see who wins, the circle or the cross.
Are you playing with yourself?
Yes, I play with myself, yes. On the canvas. I do it quickly, very quickly, and you can't think or look too closely. And then it's very often a draw, but sometimes one side or the other wins.
Very funny.
Sounds strange, but that's how it is.
Yes. And the third point that struck me is that your drawings look a bit like children's scribbles. I hope that doesn't offend you.
No, it makes me proud.
Okay. I also find that it's actually something really great because painting like a child, you have to achieve that first. And that would have been my next question. How do you achieve that? So maybe as
Difficult.
You know, I think to myself, I'm right-handed. It looks when I paint with my left hand, then I get a bit closer to it.
We talked earlier about education, and I did my training personally with the head of the then Institute of Art and Philosophy in Carinthia, and it was quite classical. So I drew. The more precise, the better. So anatomy, landscape, everything very precise. And after my studies, I would say, quite very casually fed up with this precise painting and drawing. And then tried to see what else is there, what makes a precise drawing. Let's start with a portrait. That yes, anyone can draw if they practice and have a little talent. But what makes the drawing a drawing? By Peter Kohl.
Yes, what is it?
What then? Yes, exactly. Yes, what then? That was the question.
Exactly.
Of course, it then goes in the direction of abstraction, and you have to, it's actually a bit absurd, but that's how it is. You then simply have to, from this precise sketching, doodling, it was a great difficulty to move away from that, to move into abstraction, to leave out certain things, to reduce. It was a long journey, yes. It was a long journey because this freedom...
I would never have thought that it could be a long journey from that. Yes, perfectionist painting, the skill, what one
yes, what people generally say about being able to paint, meaning that one can also depict it realistically, the proportions and all those things, and then getting away from that again. Picasso said a clever sentence about this. I'll just Google it quickly, but go on.
Well, so that was really for me, So looking back, that's how I see it. This precise drawing, the knowledge of anatomy, the knowledge of architecture in the landscape, blah, blah, blah. That was never the big difficulty for me, if I put it like that. The big challenge for me was getting away from that, changing my perception and regaining the freedom you need in your mind to achieve reasonable abstraction. Or, as you put it, to say, I draw or paint like a child. This candid view of things, this unadorned quality, this spontaneity, this gestural aspect, that was a big challenge for me. Yes, that's true.
Okay. Yes, I was about to enter it into ChatGPT, but it somehow isn't working right now.
I think I know what you mean. I've heard that before regarding, well, I have...
Paint again like a child.
Exactly. It took me fewer years to draw accurately, freely quoting here, but it took me a very long time to be able to draw like a child again.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I thought.
Yes, that's true. Seriously, I really struggled.
Can you put into words how one learns to return to these other forms, to these, how should I call them, to find these forms again?
So it is an intensive confrontation with oneself. So a lot is happening now, really a lot. It happens in the realm of perception, not really on paper or canvas, although also there, but perception is so important and the attitude towards it. Namely, gaining this inner freedom to dare to admit to oneself as a person who looks very carefully, who draws very precisely, to admit to saying, no, that's too precise for me, that's too arbitrary, that's something anyone can do. And then just start painting and drawing and say, okay, I look, I read between the lines, I look what is behind it. What is an object that I draw precisely? And what is the object that I abstract?
I would never have thought. I thought the confrontation happens much more on paper than...
Yes, indeed, it does happen on paper, but very much. And I claim now, because I can only speak from my own experience. I claim now that a lot deals with perception, with the foam. It is no coincidence that Oskar Kokoschka founded the School of Seeing in Salzburg. That I had to learn painfully. Why not draw and observe much more, so their perception must fundamentally change.
Okay, from what to where?
From what to where is a good question. So from the object that one is used to reproducing accurately to the object where one first says, okay, what is the essence? Because you see something, it goes through a filter and you reproduce it, and then you either reproduce it exactly or you abstract and say, okay, what is this object for me? What does this object mean to me? When does it disappear in the drawing? And when is it still there? Because it abstracts.
Mm.
Well, I think this, besides the drawing aspects, it is also a highly philosophical process that takes place there.
Yeah, incredible. Incredible. It looks a bit like you sometimes just scribble it down.
That's the goal, yes. Okay, of course it should be liberated. They say...
Non-objective art, Norgem, it should be freed from this precise perspective, because I have always asked myself, what does it bring me if I paint a still life, photorealistically, for example? In a time like this, I take the phone, photograph it, and that's it, and have it printed out. But what happens in painting? Where is this perspective behind it?
When you talk like this, I don't think photorealistic painting is that bad.
Yes, but it ends.
And now she even comes across a bit superficial.
Yes, because it ends. Because you paint photorealistically until it looks like a photo. And then comes the all-important question. What happens then?
You keep painting like a photographer. And that's it.
You write, I have seen even rude words on your pictures, and yet your figures appear to me always likable, nice, sometimes even funny. So anyway, I also find humor. Yes, I even read that love for your pictures is mentioned. Can you describe how you manage to do that?
Yes. Well, I love writing. So back when I was still making music, I was responsible, among other things. As it is, we wrote a lot of lyrics and also composed our own songs, and I was always in charge of the lyrics, and
that somehow stayed with me. And I like unusual word creations. I like the subtle, I don't like the obvious. And I always try to incorporate that into my characters. I like humor.
How is it with
grotesque?
Grotesque, super, I like it. Grotesque, bizarre, I like all of that. I also like this fine blade, so to speak.
In an article, Art Live Berlin, which is an art magazine, they wrote, with your doodles, you manage to combine lightness with a societal sharpness at the same time. So that's quite a huge compliment to Wu Einzau.
Yes, that's true.
That's always my goal. One of my major concerns is actually to liberate art from merely being wall decoration. So art is far more, especially in times like these, than just beautifying a room. Art should already be a little bit...
Or should move, sometimes even negatively.
Otherwise, it is not even for decoration.
Exactly. So decoration, I don't see it like that at all. For me, it's often the case that pictures seem funny, but on second glance, they're actually deadly serious. So that also happens.
Yes, I simply have the humor. I love humor, and I have already briefly mentioned it. What role does humor play in your works, or do you think it plays any role at all? And is it a means of criticism or perhaps of reconciliation for you?
Yes, so humor, both in my art and privately, is very important to me.
That's already good.
exactly?
That's good. Yes, exactly. That's good. Yes, exactly. As the Berliner would say.
That was Kölsch. I'm from near Cologne, so I can speak a bit of Kölsch. That's good, or they say that's good.
That's good, but don't they say it like that in Berlin too?
No, I don't know that now.
That doesn't matter. In any case, humor plays a very big role for me, and you can, of course, also use humor to offer criticism. It often goes over better than just plain criticism.
That is absolutely the case.
Exactly. And that's somewhat my intention, to bring this humor into, to incorporate a certain criticism. Of course, that doesn't always work, and I don't always succeed. I always say that it is the high art for me to write with a certain humor in my texts while also being critical. And I think when that works, then I find it wonderful.
Yes, that's how I got to know you. You are provocative, aren't you? Yes.
Very gladly.
You're also
Yeah,
a
same to you.
little ruthless. Yes, if there weren't also the audience, namely the art viewers, how important is the reaction of the viewers of your works to you?
Good question. Good question. But I always say, in the studio while painting, I don't care about it at all. It always becomes a topic when my gallery owners come to me regarding an exhibition and then begin to weigh out. Then I always ask, why not? Yes, that's how it is. That's how it is. That's so provocative. That could, of course, I'm always confronted with that. And in this regard, it naturally plays a role because
as an artist, you naturally also have to sell pictures to somehow make a living.
Of course, when the paintings are finished, economics considerations come into play. But thankfully, it's not me who has to make those decisions. It's my gallery owners. And the paintings that aren't suitable for the exhibition or so, they stay in my studio. And that suits me because I actually prefer them more than anything else.
Because I always say, if I can even put it that way, the more pleasing things, yes, I do not enjoy them as much.
Yes, okay. Have you ever been really confronted? Yes. When you provoked too much, or let's say, when a provocation succeeded?
Yes, very often even. Very often.
Oh, very often. Does it hurt you?
What? Pardon? Does that hurt you?
No.
It's cool. Can you tell us how you do it? Because it hurts me when some strange woman makes weird comments on, for example, Instagram. Yes. There was one who tried that often. I just block her now, just delete her because I don't want to let myself be insulted or hurt. And how do you make it so that it doesn't hurt you?
That's another good question. That I know now, yes. I always say I less that. I usually else it's like that, or it was like that. That's with the church critical things, there were really insults. Even once at the Arke Ruha, I was really called a blasphemer or whatever, the devil, whatever else, and I have nothing.
I can say it fluently.
Yes, exactly. Then I always say, wait a minute. I'm not inventing it. I'm documenting it.
Good point, yes. And yes.
And in that sense, it somehow leaves me cold when if they happen to insult, then it does not matter.
Yes. Turn to the church with it. I mean, they did it.
I have it. Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. When you notice that a viewer interprets your work completely differently from your intention, do you find that?
I assume that creating and the viewing are completely different forms of experience. And in that sense, oh yes. And in that sense, I don't care.
Okay. Oh, that means you basically let it be. That's freedom too, right? Let it roll.
So that is to me.
Yes. So I don't have a big problem with that.
Yes, okay. Do you even find it interesting sometimes or not?
Well, partially, yes, but it often happens. Strange things happen often. So then you just smile and that's it. There are definitely some very strange interpretations of my works. But as I said, I that's part of the freedom of the viewer.
You did an exhibition titled My God Has the Longest Tail.
Yes, exactly.
But the church did not do that. No? We know that.
Yes,
Nah?
but she has already done that. Definitely. She has already done that. Because that is a metaphor that somehow came to my mind. Because my God has the longest tail means nothing else, but we possess the only truth. Yes. Yes, it's very simple. Very simple. Naturally formulated, very provocatively. Very. But basically, it means it goes out to all religious communities and sects who all claim every single one. We listen up. We possess the only truth. Join us and you will be redeemed. And then I rephrased it and said, okay, that is a classic phrase. Like, my God has the biggest tail.
In some areas, that's how people speak. Yes? Exactly. Me, not so much. Yes. But everyone knows what is meant. And that was an exhibition. And what did it show?
That was actually not an exhibition. It was actually just one work, a large piece, which was first shown at Art Karlsruhe and then went on to Belgium to an exhibition in one of my gallery representations. But it was actually just a single piece.
So a picture?
A big one. It was about 2 meters by 150, I think, yes.
How did you implement this exhibition with the name My God Has the Longest Tail? As you probably didn't manage to get a tail there.
Well, it was actually just a gigantic priest with a dog's head.
And that's it.
That's it. And there was nothing big next to it, so it wasn't anything. Well, it was just a picture, a priest with a. So it was a boxer, I think. Yeah, it was a boxer. Yes. And that's it. That was the picture. Yes.
Okay, and then that is basically not just 2-layered; it's even 3-layered, because dogs do have tails, of course. Who is the bad one who thinks something bad, or how was the phrase? Something like that from the moment.
Yes, exactly. But actually, the picture itself was rather unspectacular. It was the sentence, and that is exactly. That was, of course, prominently featured in this picture.
I'd like to talk a bit more about the texts you paint on the pictures. How do you develop these texts? Or maybe we should start from the beginning regarding how you develop a picture at all.
I draw every day. And when drawing, it's always about coming up with new figures in different poses and different animals, also humans. And then often such phrases emerge. For example, in the last series, I drew a very thoughtful person with oversized hands. And the word that came to my mind was der Überdenker. And so little by little, the drawing word becomes a sketch, and from the sketch, in the very best case, a picture emerges. And often a sentence arises that somehow I can't exactly say what it is, that touches me in some way. A text then emerges, but I write exclusively when certain things align in my head. I can't always do that, for example. On the other hand, painting and drawing, I'm in the studio almost every day, so that always works. But writing, that's a peculiar thing. It only works when I am in a certain mood. Yes, okay.
In that context, I would now like to discuss a drawing. You painted a rhinoceros, and then it says pink rhino. At the pink rhino, I smooth the waters, iron your brain, roll down the tanks, crap on your castle, and silence your words. I stand and sting. I sting into your war heart, steal your breath, and hope that you feel your actions. On the red bridge, your blood will mix with white, and the rhino piss washes you into the next red hole. Exactly. So you need to explain that to me now.
Yes, that's quite simple to explain. I was so horrified back then. I don't even like saying this name because I simply hate this person. It's that dear Putin. At that time, he almost took Ukraine. And that's when this drawing emerged, this text emerged. It is directed at him. There is also a large picture. It's kind of become like the modern Don Quixote, like a knight with fins riding a rhinoceros. And that was actually exactly back then. So not exactly how the war started, but a little later that emerged. And all my anger focused on this, directed at this Putin. And the text is exclusively about it.
So the rhinoceros is incredible. It's drawn in pencil and with lines that seem like they could be from a child. And then there are little worms looking up from below. So it's like single-celled organisms with very cute eyelids looking at the rhinoceros. And why the rhinoceros in relation to Putin?
Because for me, the rhinoceros represents strength. For me, it's something powerful because if you watch the rhinoceroses in the wild, once they start running, they bulldoze everything down. And that's how I imagined it could be with Putin. That's how it came about. Yes.
I assume these are not personal experiences.
Do you also paint pictures where you process or depict personal experiences or something like that?
Yes, of course, of course. So I always say it is a mix of my personality, so from my environment, experience from my surroundings, and of course also I am a very political person.
Also, that interests me. Well, our society, what politics does to our society, the currents at the moment.
What is happening in Europe right now? So all of that concerns me. And when I say a political person, I do not mean that I belong to any party. By the way, I never have. I have never been a member of any party. I am more of a politically interested observer. Yes. I always say I am from my political orientation. I am a humanist. And when my humanistic ideas are somehow counteracted, I take action. That's how I mean it. Extremely political.
Yes, yes, yes.
I am not running out of ideas. Yes.
This frightens me like never before. A previous situation. What is happening with this crazy right shift? I'm simply calling it fascism now, which is flourishing all over the world. That scares me like nothing that has happened before. So maybe Corona comes with it.
Yes, but
Are there also pictures? Are you incorporating that into the images right now? Are you visually engaging with what is happening in the world with this right-wing shift?
Yes, of course, of course, of course. I don't know if you've seen it. There is, so to speak, the essays gallery on Facebook, and there I draw United as faces once, and by now it has grown quite a bit. So that's the political engagement in the images. In the images, it is more layered, not so direct, but it comes again and again, again and again. And it keeps coming up again and again. And this preoccupies me immensely. I feel the same as you. It frightens me deeply. Yes, because just the choice of words, this conversation culture, which is becoming more aggressive and more annoying. And when you consider that words create reality, then we are already very far along.
Yes. 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 So you made a book, Stay in Art. Tell us what the book is. I have what I read. That sounds so exciting. You were there. Yes, you didn't just take over the guest editorial, but you transformed it with this book. That's what I read. And you didn't come with questions like, what is planned? But with phrases like, let's create space for the unplanned.
Tell me, what is the book about?
Well, I will elaborate a bit further, but actually it started with me in the course of the last 30 years, pretty much 8 or 9 or even more art catalogs, like every 3 or 4 years. And at some point, after the 7th art catalog, I thought to myself, I lived through the 7th art catalog, you're busy with it, and at the print shop, and then at some point, you get 500 copies, and that's it. And now, the 10th art catalog was due, and back then I asked myself, well, it bored me to make another art catalog, to gather 30 pictures, update the Vita, and find an author to write about me. For the 10th time. That has bored in a certain way. The ones who wanted me, I didn't want anymore. I know the editors of Stay in Art quite well, because we have already done several joint projects, and about 1.5 years ago, I heard for the first time, Artist's Choice Edition. That means an artist. There is a special edition. There would be a special edition. So it's also like an art catalog, only it is a kind of crossover project. That means it. These are friendly companions included in this book. There are artists inside that I like very, very much. There are museums inside. There are certain themes inside. So just a book that goes beyond this classic art book or art catalog. You can call it whatever you want. And what also fascinated me is that they now call it something new, bookazine. So it is a mix of art, magazine, and book. That this book then...
Does that mean?
One would say now. Yes, exactly. That is also a new expression for me. But it is understandable.
Well, this is the first time I'm hearing about it. Interesting.
And what was also interesting for me was that it does not end with going to the printer. The book is printed, and then you get 500 copies, and then you bring them to the studio, and then you try to somehow showcase them in exhibitions and galleries. And in the end, we don't know what will happen with it. But in any case, this book is interesting, first of all, because it is interdisciplinary. I have a music project inside. There are many artist friends. There is sculpture. There is literature. And what also makes this extremely exciting is that this book enters the distribution system of Steinart and is distributed all over Europe for a year, or at least until the end of the year.
Or are you the only one featured in it? Or
of course, I am the main artist in there. There are many articles about me in it, but there are also other artists that I selected beforehand, the ones I really like, some of whom I am friends with and have already done joint exhibitions with. So they are in there too. They are being presented. They are... Yes, exactly. So I was fascinated by Krasimir's project. What he did, it was about Down syndrome.
Yes, that's right, which is why I also asked him to do a podcast. You are welcome to listen. Dear listeners, in one of the previous episodes, I also had a conversation with Krasimir, and I also think so. I found it absolutely amazing how he presented it. Absolutely incredible.
Absolutely. And I'm also very good friends with Krasimir. And when he showed me the project, well, that was actually before the book. I was truly fascinated. And then when I was working with this editorial team, I said it has to be included.
Yes.
You have multiple web pages, I get the impression. Then there's also Peter Kohl home base. What is that?
So I started my artistic career in Tyrol and Vorarlberg, and I always referred to it as my home, as my artistic home base. I am from Carinthia, and even now I do actually very, very, very little artistic work. Carinthia and in Vorarlberg and in Tyrol, there I had my first big, I would say, my first major experiences as an artist, and I still have these. And back then a friend and I said, he will make a homepage, and we call this homepage home base, because for me, because Tyrol is a bit of an artistic home base for me.
Ah, I see. Yes, there are beautiful pictures to see, or works, including sculptures. I see here right now the mole-fired clay and painted a Mickey Mouse, right?
No, the mole is a mole. I have the Mickey Mouse. No, of course, the starting point is Mickey Mouse. Some years ago, I thought this Mickey Mouse, you see her everywhere. So many artists take up the theme Mickey Mouse here, Mickey Mouse there. And I thought I would also take up the theme of Mickey Mouse. Only for me, she is either, at one point, she was a rat. And once she was a mole.
Yes, the Dirt Angel. I also find it great. Exactly, yes. Dirt Angel. Or it's not so small. It's 1.70 meters by 1.10 meters.
Yes, those are these word creations that appear in various texts and which I am always searching for. I like strange word creations, strange sentences. So everything that somehow does not correspond to the classical ideal pleases me.
Yes, that comes across in your works. Dear Peter, what are your future projects or goals in art? Where can we see you? How will it continue for you?
So it was like this. We spent a year working on this Artist Choice Edition, and just a week ago, this book was presented in Meran, and now I'm catching my breath a bit. But of course, it continues. We are currently in the planning of this Artist's Choice Edition. It will soon, I think, from the middle of the year, be in all my galleries
which are scattered throughout Europe. Will there be a little pop-up event in each of my galleries where the Artist's Choice edition will be presented not only in newsstands and bookstores, but also in my galleries?
We are currently planning that.
Yes, how nice. So it was a great pleasure for me to delve deeper into your works. There's such depth to discover. Amazing.
Fine, I'm pleased about that.
Dear Peter, thank you very much for the truly interesting conversation. Thank you as well. Thanks.
How Does the Art Scene Tick? A podcast by and with Petra Lawson.